Okay. When I realised this was a video I really needed to make, I went off and did some research, and turns out there's very little research on what it's like to be autistic and pregnant. And yet, a lot of autistic people are going to end up pregnant. Anyway, I thought I should talk about my experiences because having a baby, being a mother, I have really noticed a shift in how well I cope with the day-to-day life. As a friend of mine said, it's referring to something else, but she said it's not that I'm more autistic under these circumstances, it's that I am struggling more because I'm not getting as much sleep, because I've got new things to worry about, because let's face it, newborn babies make a lot of noise and produce a lot of smells, and it is all new sensory input that you're dealing with. So I've definitely noticed an exacerbation of my difficulties. And I really want to make that distinction, that I don't see autism as a bad thing. A lot of what makes me me is tied in with the autism, and a lot of the things I like about me are tied in with the autism. My passion, my curiosity, my intelligence, my compassion, even my empathy, which I know flies in the face of the myth of autism, but I think it's all tied together. So there's a lot to do with my autism that means a lot to me, but I do have difficulties, and I do live in a world that makes those difficulties more pronounced. And having a baby is definitely a time when I felt that, being a mother and being pregnant, hugely. So I was over the moon when I found out I was pregnant. I have wanted to be a mum since I was 4 years old, and my aunt came over from Germany with her younger son, and I met him for the first time. And my mum could see that I was utterly besotted with this tiny little boy, who is now well over 6 foot with his very deep voice, and I still find that quite a jarring image because he's my baby cousin. And my mum said to me, you can have one of those one day, you can have a baby. And that was it. All I wanted from that point on. My entire goal in life was to be a mum. Oh, I wanted other things. I wanted to be a dog when I grew up. I wanted to be a film star. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a writer, which, I'm working on. But the most important, the sense of who I was, who I am, is tied in with the idea of being a mother. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was over the moon, because it had taken longer than I'd wanted. My husband, then partner, now husband, he very sensibly wanted to wait until we were in a big enough house. I was all over doing this in a 1-bed flat. He wanted to make sure we were both in stable, secure jobs, all the sensible stuff. So of course we both got made redundant when I was on maternity, but you figure through. So we had our baby, and I knew I was pregnant basically straight away. I felt something change inside me that I can't quite explain. And then some other changes. My bosom became incredibly sensitive. I felt very turned on a lot of the time in a way that was really weird for me. And that lasted a couple of days. I had a quite painful chest as well as really sensitive. So that was when I really knew something was definitely different, and of course we were trying for a baby, so I had a pretty good idea what it was. I still had to wait a bit of time before I was able to take a test, and it was a nice, strong, clear, definite line, and I was over the moon, and I told people straight away. And I know you're supposed to wait till, 8 or 12 weeks, but I didn't want to, because I've had friends go through miscarriages, I've been through a miscarriage, and I didn't want to go through that without support at this time. And I know a lot of pregnancies end in miscarriage, and I just wanted my friends to know the excitement, and then if things had gone wrong, I'd have had that support in place. And I do highly recommend doing that. Having seen friends go through miscarriage without telling anyone, I mean, I nearly lost a friend because she didn't know about a miscarriage I went through at the same time she was getting pregnant. So I recommend reaching out and telling people straight away. My workplace weren't exactly thrilled, but obviously my circus work, which I was doing at the time, I had to tell them straight away because safety. So the other instructors knew straight away, and I basically told everyone because my boobs were out here, so people noticed. And my bump grew quite quickly. I'm quite slim anyway. I mean, this is me a lot bigger than I used to be, and I'm still pretty slim. So yeah, I was pretty obvious pretty quickly. I was one of them that showed quite quickly. And if you didn't know me, you maybe wouldn't have noticed, but it was obvious to people who did. But anyway, I sent the photo of the positive pregnancy test straight away to my siblings, to my closest friends. And one of my friends messaged me back to say how thrilled she was for me. She knew how much this meant to me, but she also told me something that was so important, that became so important to me, and I want to say it to you now. If you are pregnant, if you are planning on becoming pregnant, it is okay to hate it. It is fine to hate being pregnant. And I messaged her back and said, I'm loving it, it's amazing, it's the best thing ever. And within a week, I hated it. I felt like an alien in my own body. I felt like this body wasn't mine anymore. Like I didn't fit in my own body, like I was someone else. Oh, it was just horrible. I will do another video another time about the labour, because I did not have a straightforward, easy, nice labour. I got through it. And if I can get through it, anyone else can too, okay, guys? But it was tough. And I would still go through that. A 3-week-long labour, a 3-week-long labour with 4 hours of push, I would do that again, basically constantly, rather than be pregnant again, because I hated it. And the thing is, every pregnancy is different, and people say to me, oh, you shouldn't let it put you off, but I really hated it. I was pregnant over the summer, and it was a really hot summer, the way they tend to be these days, and the heat bothers me at the best of times. I think it's one of my biggest triggers that I can easily identify. So yeah, my biggest identifiable trigger is probably heat and humidity, and it was one of those summers, and I was pregnant, so I could not escape the heat. I was taking constant cold showers, I was drinking ice cold water. Every time he stopped fidgeting for a second, I was on the cold water because he was such a fidget. And I loved feeling him move. I know some people who find that absolutely the worst bit of being pregnant, but I loved it. For me, and I could feel him move so early. But I had read and researched, so I think part of it was that I knew that what I was feeling was baby kicks. And also I know my body really well, so I recognised it as being a different feeling to the feelings, the sensations I'm used to feeling within my body. And this probably partly comes from having fibromyalgia and having had to deal with that for so long. But also, I think it is part of the autism is that extra sensitivity to the experience of being in my own body. I think I have maybe better interoception than most people, the same way some autistic people are more attuned to external influences, and some autistic people are less attuned to that. And we hear a lot about how autistic people have very poor interoception. I have a feeling I'm the other end of that. I think I have quite acute interoception, to the point that it can be a source of overwhelm, and I can lose track of what the hell is going on in my body because I can feel too much of it. Same as if it's too bright, blah, blah, blah. And that was a huge part, with hindsight, with understanding myself, that was a huge part of why I hated being pregnant. There was just too much going on in my body that was different, that was new, that I didn't understand. And that's, I think, why I felt alien in my body, why I felt like I didn't belong in my own body, that it wasn't my body, because it was so different. So much going on. There were so many hormones flooding the system that you don't normally have. And I think I was just more aware of that than most people. And I have a feeling that's a common thing. Obviously, not all autistic people are going to have that, but I think it's probably not an unusual experience for autistic people. I experienced a lot of pain during pregnancy. I had round ligament pain, which is, I think it's the one that goes across here. And it's quite a common pregnancy pain. I had it from really early in the pregnancy through to the end. I had mild, I can't remember what they call it now, but where your pelvis dislocates a bit. I think it's still slightly out of kilter because I still get quite a lot of pain there that I didn't get before. Yeah, I think maybe I'll do another video another time about the post-pregnancy issues that I now have. Physical ones. Yeah, so I didn't have very bad dislocation because I'm hypermobile, so I went to the physio really early when I first noticed that there was something not right. I got some support, bandages and belts and stuff really early, and I think that helped. I've known people who've ended up in wheelchairs because of it, and I'm really glad I didn't get beyond needing just loads of wraps and supports and belts and stuff to hold everything in place. Pass those on to other pregnant people who were just very pleased, because I think even if you're not aware of it as strongly, I think a lot of people get problems with it. So it's nice to have that bit of extra support around your hips and just to hold the belly up a bit for you. My sense of smell skyrocketed. My husband did not believe how powerful it was until the day he was cooking chicken, and I walked in and went, oh, tarragon, and he had put a pinch of tarragon into the sauce, like enough that he didn't think we'd even be able to flavour it. He didn't think he'd put enough in, and the kitchen to me was overwhelmingly tarragon. And after that, he believed me when I said that I could smell every time he lifted the lid off the bin, even if I wasn't in the room. I didn't get weird food cravings as such. There were certain foods that if I started to eat them, I couldn't stop. Olives in particular. It wasn't like I desperately wanted olives, but if somebody offered me an olive, I would eat the whole lot, which is normally me and avocados. And that was quite weird. So salty foods, I think I ate quite, this is probably why my little boy, all he wants to eat is crisps. I ate quite a lot of salty foods, which I think I don't always get enough salt in my diet, and I can usually tell because I usually start to want something with crisps, scrambled eggs, or olives. Usually means I'm not getting enough salt and I need to increase my salt levels if I start to want those. And when I was pregnant, I was more aware of that. My iron levels dipped quite low, so I was forced to eat broccoli, but I love broccoli and my husband hates it, so the fact I was now under medical instruction to eat more broccoli was a really nice thing for me, because I really like broccoli. Yeah, I always liked broccoli. So that was alright. No weird food cravings. Songs though. So this is weird. I listened to Fear Factory's Digimortal album pretty much on repeat. If I was in the car, all I wanted to listen to was the Digimortal album by Fear Factory. And there's certain tracks on there in particular that really just needed that noise. And one of them is called Back the F Up. It is my son's favourite song. He calls it Batteries, fortunately. We had a good chat the other day about why I was not going to tell him what the real name was, and I was not going to tell him the lyrics. You know, there's magic words, and they are useful words to know and have in your vocabulary, but you should only use them if you need to get the magic power from them, which is, you know, if you hit your hand with a hammer or something, it makes you feel better, but only if you only use them in those circumstances. Sorry, I'm not teaching them to you today. That was an interesting conversation. So we'll keep calling that one Batteries for now. And I have a feeling it's because he heard it so much whilst he was in the womb. And I couldn't tell you why. I think it was like other people, get food cravings, I had this weird sound craving. I have no idea if that's something anyone else has experienced. If you know anyone else who had sound cravings rather than food cravings, I would love to hear about that, because that was not something I expected. And my little sister did say to me, I think it was when I got the round ligament pain really early, she said, yeah, it's unusual, but it would be even more unusual if you had nothing unusual during your pregnancy. So that was quite reassuring. She was pregnant with her second at the time, and she's been a nurse, and she's still a nurse. She's been a nurse in loads of different departments, and she's somebody that I respect a lot when it comes to stuff like anything medical, really. So yeah, that was great from her. And it reassured me about the round ligament pain. I could feel him kicking really early. I could feel Braxton Hicks really early, to the point I thought I was miscarrying. I think it was it was really early. I googled it, and it's like the earliest date that you are capable of feeling Braxton Hicks. That was the day that I googled it, and I'd been feeling them for a few days by that point. So I had them fairly constantly through the pregnancy, which is probably part of why I didn't like it, but my experience at the time was way more this sense of being alien in my body was what I really didn't like, and I can't describe it better than that. My body didn't belong to me, and it felt almost like I wasn't supposed to be within my own body. It was horrible. But I could feel him kicking, and he kicked me right under the rib here. Oh, it was so painful, but it meant he was there, and I could feel him, and he was so squirmy and so alive, and I loved that. We had a beautiful, beautiful cat at the time, and I miss her like crazy. She died when he was, 11 months old, something like that. But she used to sit on the bump and knead with her paws, and then he'd come wiggling up, and he'd push back from underneath. Yeah, it was really lovely. A little bit painful, but really lovely. And I think because I've had the fibromyalgia for so long, a lot of the pain side of it didn't faze me the way it might another person, because I've got this ability to ignore pain that endures. So a sharp, sudden, acute pain, I'm still going to yelp, but a pain that's fairly constant, that carries on, I might complain about it, but I can handle it better than a lot of other people because I've got more practice than other people. There's this story that autistic people don't feel pain the same way as non-autistic people, and I wonder if it's more to do with the fact that we don't express the pain in the same way, or if more of us are in more pain more of the time, therefore are more used to handling pain. I don't know the research. But that is something we talk about. Autistic people do go down these deep dives. I found a lot of the pregnancy apps that I was pointed at that's supposed to give you now your baby is this big, you should be feeling like this, really unhelpful, because so often they were saying you will be feeling like this at this point, and I'd be like, I felt like that a few weeks ago. Or that sudden burst of energy you meant to get in the second trimester never happens. I stopped washing my hair. I have fatigue issues anyway, tied in with the fibromyalgia, tied in with the hypermobility, and tied in with the autism, so triple whammy. And then I was pregnant, and it was so blimming hot, and I had no energy. I was struggling to do anything. So my hair's quite long. It's used to be quite thick. Yeah, I've just realised how thin it is now. And I stopped washing it because it takes, the washing it's not too bad, but drying it takes, I am not joking here, hours to do properly. And it was just more effort than I had. So my hair got a bit greasy, but everyone's like, oh, pregnancy gorilla, your hair looks amazing. And I'm like, it's really greasy right now, but thank you, I'll take it. Because our brains trick us. So you see somebody, I think sometimes we interpret what we're seeing differently, and people saw my hair look different and decided it looked nice because I was pregnant, and people who are pregnant get better hair, rather than realising it was really greasy. But by the time I'd given birth to him, my hair had sorted itself out and was no longer greasy, and now I just rinse it with water, and it is in the best condition it has ever been, which probably says a lot about the condition it used to be in. complete sidetrack. Anyway, so yeah, the fatigue was atrocious. Oh my goodness. We went to one antenatal class because they recommend you do, and my big takeaway was that breastfeeding would be easy, which no. Fortunately, I'd had friends who struggled with it, so when I struggled with it, I was able to adapt to the new way of thinking faster. So I was told, yes, you're doing fine. Dismissed from hospital, you're breastfeeding beautifully. The antenatal class, yes, it just happens. And when a couple of days later we were rushed back to hospital because he wasn't feeding, it took adjustment, but I was able to make that adjustment and not feel guilty because friends of mine had been through that same thing. Actually, I mentioned before about the friend I nearly lost from miscarriage. It was after she had the baby that she had been trying for at that point. She had this same experience and I knew about it. So when I went through it, I was like, you know what, I can get through this. And there was an amazing healthcare assistant at the hospital who cannot sing her praises highly enough. So the antenatal class wasn't the most helpful. I was really, really lucky in that several of our friends had babies at the same time. So my younger sister was pregnant with her second. Gave birth to my niece 2 days after one of my best friends had her first baby. Another baby arrived a few weeks after that, and one of my other friends had her baby the night before I took my pregnancy test. So I found out that baby had arrived 10 minutes after I found out I was pregnant. So there's this sort of 8-month gap between the oldest and my little one, the youngest in that group, which meant that I had this support network in place. I've also got a lot of friends who've had babies before me because, as I said, I've waited a little bit to do it. I think anyone who's pregnant deserves to have a good support network around them because it is hard. Whilst I think it is harder for me as an autistic person, I think it's hard, can be hard for anybody regardless of circumstance, regardless of previous health. I mean, there are some people who are way more likely to find it hard, but anyone can find pregnancy hard, and that's okay. Just have support. You deserve it. So what else was there? My sense of smell, didn't really have food cravings. There's a bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about, but the biggest thing was this sense of being alien in my body. And I was quite keen. I didn't know if he was a boy or a girl. I was fairly sure he was a girl because, you know, I really wanted a girl. I didn't really know what to do with a boy. And when he landed on my chest, I heard them say, it's a boy. And I went, I don't really want a boy. And then he came up and he was here. And he could already lift his head. I never had to worry. I mean, I did, but I never had to worry about supporting his head because he could lift it from the moment he was born. And he just looked at me, and I had this thought of, but I want this one, and it was mine, you know. Again, that's another video talking about that moment. I feel really lucky that I had that moment of immediate bonding. I have a history of depression, and I was aware that prenatal depression, antenatal depression is a thing. Being pregnant and getting depressed whilst you're pregnant is a thing. And we talk a lot about postnatal depression. And there was a little concern that I might slip that way. But we were also concerned I could slip into prenatal, antenatal depression because I've got this history, and there's not much research on autistic people being pregnant, but there does seem to be a higher incident of prenatal and postnatal depression. So it was something we watched, monitored for. I didn't experience that, which I'm really grateful for. My anxiety levels were a lot higher, especially straight after he was born, but even whilst I was pregnant, my anxiety levels were a lot higher. And that's never 100% gone away. And I understand that that is normal for all women and, well, all people who give birth, and it is likely to last forever. And apparently it's worse for people whose first child is a boy, and it's, there's epigenetics and bits going in your brain, and it's quite interesting, and I don't understand most of it. but yeah, so my anxiety levels have been higher since I was pregnant, and that is definitely impacting me. Obviously, since I had him, we've had a COVID pandemic. As I said, both me and my husband got made redundant whilst I was on maternity. There's been a lot of like outside world stresses and anxiety inducing incidences, so maybe it's not surprising. But yeah, whilst I was pregnant, I could feel much more anxious. I was concerned about some of the medication I'm on. We were monitoring in case I went into an early labour. The medication I'm on for my fibromyalgia, the one thing there's not much research on medications and pregnancy, because generally, well, I mean, it's not ethical to experiment on pregnant women. So they kind of rely on people being like, well, actually, this medication is more important to me, is too important, my quality of life will be so diminished that it's worth the risk of continuing the pregnancy. Continuing to take medication whilst pregnant. So I knew my inhalers were going to be fine. As the GP put it to me, you not being able to breathe is going to have a greater impact upon the child than the little bit of steroids that's going to get to them. I was at a slightly increased risk of an early labour because of the pain medication I'm on. And again, we agreed that my quality of life would be more impacted, that would have and the stress of that would have a greater impact upon my fetus, or whatever stage of development it was at that time, embryo, than me continuing to take the medication. So I continued to take it. We just kept an eye out and made sure I was all right. And my younger sister, who, as I said, is amazing and again does a lot of these sorts of the right kind of research, she said I needed to make sure I was staying active and maybe increasing my cardio and strength based exercises in the run up, because the more exercise I was doing, the sooner his lungs would develop. So if I did have him a bit early, it would be safer. There is a point when that no longer applies, after which it doesn't. Like, he was late, his lungs were not more developed than a late baby's normally are, they just develop a bit earlier. So if he had been early, he would have been a little bit protected, because I was making sure to keep my exercise up. I gave up my circus at about 6 months. I got some beautiful photos of me on the equipment with this big bump. But I eventually reached a point where I was literally too tired. The classes were all evening classes at the time. I think if the Saturday class that we now run was on, I might have been able to do that, because that's in the during the day. But these were all in the evening, and I just no energy by the time I got to the evenings. So I had to stop, which was really difficult, because that's my pain management, and it was a huge part of my social life as well. And so I found that really hard. Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, whilst I've said I hated being pregnant, whilst I've said I still have quite a lot of pain through my body that I didn't have before, whilst I've said my anxiety levels are through the roof constantly, whilst there's a lot that's been difficult, all of it has been worth it. I've always wanted to be a mother, and it has not disappointed me. Yeah. So the medications I was on were fine. I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl, because as we came up to the 20-week scan, the day before the scan, someone asked me if he was going to be pink or blue. And when you're pregnant, your brain does work a bit differently. And they said this, and I went, it's not a colour, it's a person. And I refused to find out the gender of my baby for that reason, which is kind of funny, because I was well up for finding out right up to that moment, and then this weird stubbornness came over me. My husband wasn't bothered one way or the other. He was quite happy with whatever I decided on that front, which was great. So we didn't find out. People who were asking, we got loads of beautiful rainbow stuff, we got loads of dinosaurs. It's really hard to find dragon stuff. It's getting a bit easier, but it was really hard to find dragon stuff. But they're, nice, and everyone likes dragons, dinosaurs, and rainbows, right? Um, yeah. And I'd had somebody talk about gender preference, asked me if I had gender preference, and she went, it's okay if you do. So actually, again, that was quite nice because I did. I really wanted a girl in my head. And to be told it's okay to have that desire was helpful for me, because then I didn't feel guilty about having that preference. To be told it's okay is liberating in a way. And she said, so I said, so I want to find out early, because then if it is a boy, I've got time to come to terms with it and like get used to the idea. And she said actually for her it was better to find out on the day, because then you don't have time to worry about it. And actually I'm glad I went with the not finding out, because when he was put on me, it didn't matter that he was a boy, he was mine. And I actually now feel like I'd have no idea what to answer if I had a girl. And yeah. Basically what I'm saying is the gender of your child doesn't matter, they're your child. For me, I felt it straight away, like this just instant bond. I feel lucky, but I was on a massive dose of oxytocin at times. That probably helped. As much as I'd rather not admit that the science is behind it all. Yeah, I was on a lot of oxytocin. As I said, I'll talk about the labour another time. Yeah, everyone said to me, you'll get to a point, maybe you'll get to your due date and you'll just want him out. And I was feeling like that. I just wanted it out. I just wanted to meet it. And then we got hit the due date and I went, I feel fine. I feel all right. Actually, I've got some energy now. I'm still tired, but not like I have been. And actually, I'm quite comfortable. Like, I've still got the pain, but I'm used to it now. I'm settled in this. Actually, I don't mind being pregnant anymore. 9 days late. Turned out I had been in labour before the due date. Just really, I thought it was Braxton Hicks, strong Braxton Hicks. It wasn't till another friend was pregnant and another friend shared a video about how to tell the difference. I was like, oh, so that was labour for 3 weeks. And I got through it, guys, look. It's positive. I collected all the horror stories, the labour horror stories and pregnancy horror stories, because I was like, if my friends tell me the worst of it, and I know where they are now and how they feel now, then it's, you know, if they can get through it, they're my friends. If they can get through it, I can get through it. And I collected the good stories too, but the hard work of it was what was important to me. I wanted to be prepared for that side of it. I do sometimes wonder, because other friends of mine refused to get the hard work stories and only got the good stories, and some of them had much easier labours than me. Conversely, some of them had much harder labours than me, because I think they weren't mentally prepared for how hard it could be, and it's just coincidence that other guys had easy labours. Perceptual bias and all that. Anyway, so yeah, I had this weird experience being pregnant. I would love to try going through labour again, because I feel a bit competitive with myself and I want to see if I can do it more efficiently this time. Not better. There was nothing wrong with the labour I had, in terms of I went from being pregnant to having a healthy baby, minimal damage to myself. Like I said, I'll talk about it in another video. I didn't bleed out, and I didn't, you know, that it could have gone very wrong. I am very aware that if the NHS wasn't here, there's a very high chance I wouldn't be here anymore. So I'm very grateful to the NHS. You know, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't how I would have written it if I'd had it exactly how I wanted it. It wasn't how I wanted to have him at home in a pool of water. And that didn't work out in the end. And that was okay, because I was mentally prepared for it to not work out. My birth plan was really fluid. It was, I'd like him at home. I do not want, I cannot remember the name of the drug. There's a particular drug that I was adamant I was not having, because my mum had it when I was born. I was the only one of her children who she had it for, and I was the only labour that was really difficult. My sister didn't have it, my younger sister didn't have it during her labours, but she's had it as a pain relief for other things, and it nearly killed her. I just didn't want to take the risk that I was also similarly sensitive to it. I'm pretty sure it begins with a P. It's one of the really, really common drugs that you have during labour. That's going to annoy me. If I remember, I'll put it in the comments. Yeah, so I had that. Basically, my birth plan was, if it doesn't work at home, we'll go to hospital and I'll do whatever we need to do in hospital, but I won't have this particular drug, and I want delayed cord clamping. But I didn't write any of it down. We just agreed it with my midwife. So, of course, when we ended up in hospital, I didn't get my home birth midwife. I had to go onto the hospital team, and I had so many midwives. They seemed to change every half hour. So I didn't get the delayed cord clamping either, which was a shame. But I think having a fluid birth plan helped me. Again, I keep going back to the labour, and I really do think that's content for another video. But being pregnant was really hard, and I don't really want to be pregnant again. For all that everyone tells me, it's different every time. I still have some of the pains in my body that started during pregnancy. I still get them. I can feel it here still. I still have pelvic issues as well, where I feel like maybe I did slightly dislocate and it's not gone back to where it should have been quite. It aggravates around my period especially, but that's always been the case. All of my pain across my whole body exacerbates any injury I've ever had. I can feel again during my period, which kind of sucks. And I think it's tied in with the fibromyalgia. Yeah, so being pregnant was really hard. For me personally, it was so worth it. Would I do it again? Yeah, I would. I don't think my husband wants to go through it again, and that's okay. And I don't need to go through it again. I needed to do it once. I don't feel that same need to do it more than once. And I would only go through it again because I know how worthwhile the outcome is. And actually, I've got the outcome. I've got this little boy who is my world. So I don't need to do it again. If we were in a different circumstance, if we decided we wanted a second child, yeah, I would quite happily do it again, even though it was hell, because it was worth it. But I am curious how it is for other people. I did become overwhelmed far more easily. I was so tired all the time, and I don't think it was just him draining me. I think it was also just dealing with being overwhelmed on a exaggerated level, on a level more intense than I'm used to being constantly overwhelmed, because I had this extra, even if I was in a cool dark room with cool dark quiet room, neutral smells, I was still experiencing sensory overwhelm because I had this extra, and I could never be in a cool room because I had this heat just constantly from here, and my interoception was just constant on overwhelm. I think that's why I never experienced that little kick of energy you're meant to get in the second trimester. I was just so tired, and they do say that every pregnancy is different, but I think because I'm autistic, because I experience sensory overwhelm in normal non-pregnant life, I have a feeling that if I were to be pregnant again, I would experience again a lot of the overwhelm feelings, and I wonder if I would experience that alien sense within my body, the feeling that it isn't my body. That was the most difficult bit for me. People talk about an alien presence in your body, but for me it was my entire body that felt alien, not just this parasite that's growing here. My entire body, from my toes to the top of my head, my fingertips, every bit of me felt alien. It felt like it wasn't mine, it wasn't me. And no one had warned me about that. So I don't know if it's something that well, of course someone else in the world will have experienced it, but I don't know how common it is, and I don't know if it's tied in with being autistic or if it's just something that some people who are pregnant have. I wish there was more research on being autistic and being pregnant, because even now I'm still dealing with a lot of how it made me feel. I mean, he's 3.5 now, nearly 4. Oh, he's nearly 4. Um, and my body is still recovering. My body still has these oddities that it didn't have before, and I'm mentally still dealing with that sense of feeling unwelcome in my. It's not even unwelcome in my body. I was unwelcome in the body that I was in, and it was not my body. It was this collection of cells, but it was not my body. I'm still dealing with that, with the emotional impact of feeling like that, and I've not had any support on it. Actually, it's only now making this video that it's made me realise that actually I think I do need some emotional support on that. I wish I had loved being pregnant. I was so excited about it, and it was really hard to hate it. And it feels horrible to look back on it feeling something other than love and excitement for it. It is such a saving grace for me that I know several other people who had pregnancies and hated the feeling of being pregnant. I have a friend who's got 2 children, hated both pregnancies, would go through labour, she said to me at my baby shower. She would go through labour every weekend rather than be pregnant again. And when I had finished the whole process of being pregnant, when I had my labour, I knew exactly what she meant. And she had really, really easy labours, 2 of them, both under 6 hours, both, I mean, the second one, her husband delivered in the bath because the paramedics and midwives couldn't get there fast enough, you know. She had very different labours to me. But it was reassuring to have had her at my baby shower and to have had my other friend text me back as soon as I told her I was pregnant, to give me permission to feel the way I felt soon after. Because I think if she hadn't done that and I had hit that point of I hate this, without knowing that that's normal, without having been told it's okay to feel that way, we sell such a rosy picture of pregnancy, and I think I would have found it even harder to have felt the way I did if I hadn't been told that that is okay. And it doesn't change how you feel about your child at the end. It really doesn't. I couldn't love him more. When my mental health gets bad and I feel like an absolute failure in everything I do, the one thing I do not doubt is my ability to be a parent. I feel really lucky, but it has come very naturally to me, and it feels very instinctive, and I very, very rarely feel any doubt in my abilities in that one field. And when I do feel doubt, it's because other people have been making me feel doubt. And I've learned to just ignore that and trust myself, because I can see the person he is, and I can see the impact that my parenting has on him. And so I don't doubt that part of my life. So it doesn't matter how hard the pregnancy is. It is the parenting that matters. You can have the most awful pregnancy in the world and still adore the person who comes out of it. I just want to start to normalise the idea that pregnancy isn't pleasurable for everybody, that it is hard work, it is exhausting, and not everyone feels very good doing it. And one thing I didn't get, but everyone prepared me for, was these intense dreams. I didn't have them. Horrible dreams where really nasty things happen and do nasty things, and it feels very, very real. And I never had them, and I was so prepared to have them because I'd been warned about them and they sounded horrible. So I was quite glad I didn't have them, if I'm honest. But that was something I had been prepared for and didn't experience. So you know, just because my pregnancy was hard work doesn't mean anyone else's will be. My sister breathes, both my sisters seem to breeze through pregnancy. Maybe if I spoke to them a bit more closely about it, I'm sure they'll have plenty of experiences where it was not fun for them. But neither of them had that I am alien in my body experience, as far as I'm aware. So, yeah, I found pregnancy hard. I think it's because I have an increased interoception, an increased awareness of the inside of me, and that I do experience sensory overwhelm on that from time to time when I'm not pregnant. So maybe it's not a surprise that I also got it when I was. I craved sound rather than and visual stimming. I loved light patterns and glitter. I mean, I loved that anyway, but that was enhanced. I wanted that even more, but I also needed cool, dark spaces. White noise was quite good as well. Where I was working at the time, I sometimes ended up in this little office that had a mini server room next to it. So obviously it had a lot of aircon in it, and the aircon noise was some days just what I needed, and some days really hellish. And that was an experience I had before I was pregnant, but it was definitely enhanced by being pregnant. Yeah, it's a weird one. And I feel like I've rambled on long enough, so I'll stop there. All right, bye.